In 1985, DC Comics did something controversial. They killed off Supergirl. Not only did Kara Zor-El die during Crisis on Infinite Earths, but in the ensuing reboot of the DC universe, the character was nowhere to be found. Despite Supergirl being a long-established part of the DC landscape, regularly appearing in comics since the late 1950s and having numerous solo titles, Kara was erased from continuity for 2 decades, with DC instead introducing several other Supergirls to take her place, from the shape-shifting Matrix to the Earthborn angel Linda Danvers. The story behind Supergirl's creation, death, and the many other heroes who adopted the mantle before her return is fascinating, and so in this video, I want to explain the history behind Supergirl's removal from DC canon, the real reason why the company sought to move away from Kara Zor-El, and the long journey to bring this iconic hero back to the DC universe. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. The Kara Zor-El version of Supergirl first appeared in Action Comics number 252 from May of 1959. She was created by Otto Binder and Al Plastino and introduced as Superman's long-lost cousin who survived Krypton's destruction on Argo City. On Earth, she adopted the human persona of Linda Lee and was reunited with Kal-El, now fully grown and acting as Superman. Kara's first appearance was a huge hit with readers. Action Comics number 255 even featured a letters page full of overwhelming positivity towards this new character and her place within the Superman mythos. It's worth noting that while Kara was the original Supergirl, DC had attempted to introduce several other female Superman characters in earlier years. In 1943's Action Comics issue 60, Lois Lane became Superwoman in a dream sequence. Likewise in 1958 Superman issue 123, Jimmy Olsen creates a Supergirl using a magic totem, with this comic supposedly being used by DC to directly test public response before the introduction of an official Supergirl. Nevertheless, after Kara was introduced, she frequently appeared in both Action Comics and the Legion of Superheroes titles, before becoming the lead feature in Adventure Comics in 1969. In 1972, Supergirl received an ongoing series that ran for 2 years, before being merged with the Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane series to form the Superman family. She would receive another ongoing series, The Daring New Adventures of Supergirl, in 1982, and was even the star of a live-action feature film 2 years later. Therefore, by the mid-1980s, Supergirl was a fairly popular and integral part of the DC universe. However, as the company began plotting an ambitious event called Crisis on Infinite Earths, a storyline that would result in the hard reset of the entire DC universe, executive editor Dick Giordano pitched killing the character off, due to both the poor reception of her live-action film and the belief that Superman's status as the last son of Krypton was being diminished by the existence of other Kryptonians. With this decision made, the responsibility of killing Kara off was handed to writer Marv Wolfman and artist George Perez, who sought to use this mandate to raise the stakes for the Crisis storyline and help reset Superman's status quo for whatever came next. As Wolfman later recalled,
"Before Crisis, it seemed like half of Krypton had survived the explosion. We had Superman, Supergirl, Krypto, the Phantom Zone criminals, the bottled city of Kandor, and many others. Our goal was to make Superman unique. We went back to his origin and made Kal-El the only survivor of Krypton. That, sadly, was why Supergirl had to die. However, we were thrilled by all the letters we received saying Supergirl's death in Crisis was the best Supergirl story they ever read."
As such, in Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, released in October of 1985, Kara Zor-El would meet her end at the hands of the Anti-Monitor, being fatally wounded by an antimatter blast, sacrificing herself to save Superman. The character's death would quickly become one of the most iconic moments in comic history, with that issue's cover depicting Clark holding her body and screaming in anguish, still remaining one of the most instantly recognizable comic images of all time. At the end of Crisis, the Anti-Monitor was defeated and the multiverse was reborn in one singular continuity, and in this new look DC landscape, the world seemingly returned to normal, except for 2 major deaths that occurred during this storyline, Barry Allen and Supergirl. But while DC had immediate plans to relaunch The Flash with Wally West now at the helm, their initial intention was for Supergirl to be simply left behind, a permanent fixture of DC's Silver and Bronze Ages, left to be forgotten as they ushered in a brand new era. In the aftermath of Crisis on Infinite Earths, the DC Universe underwent a wholesale reboot, with each of its major heroes being reintroduced with a clean slate of continuity. As part of this experiment, writer-artist John Byrne was hired to take over Superman, following a successful stint at Marvel working on Uncanny X-Men with Chris Claremont and his 5-year run on the Fantastic Four. Byrne's overhaul of Superman began in the 6-part miniseries The Man of Steel, released between October and December of 1986. This project retold Kal-El's origin and introduced modernized versions of his greatest allies and villains, all while placing a significant emphasis on humanizing Superman and de-emphasizing the Kryptonian lore that dominated many of his pre-Crisis stories. As part of this relaunch, DC editorial issued a mandate that Clark would be the only living Kryptonian featured in their books. Henceforth, Byrne presented a Clark Kent with no Supergirl, no Fortress of Solitude, no Krypto, and no Bottle City of Kandor. Despite this clear attempt to distance the Man of Tomorrow away from these more fantastical elements, DC would reintroduce some of these concepts in new ways soon after. For example, in 1987, they brought Power Girl, the Earth 2 version of Kara, into this new continuity. Though now being depicted as a descendant of an Atlantean sorcerer born thousands of years ago and being completely unrelated to Superman. Alongside helming the Man of Steel miniseries, Byrne spearheaded the newly launched monthly Superman title, which he wrote for 22 issues. This run concluded with a storyline called the Supergirl Saga. In Superman number 16 from April of 1988, Clark travels to a pocket universe and its parallel Earth, learning that in this reality he died as a child, Lex Luthor is good, and he created an artificial life form called Matrix to protect the Earth. Upon entering the pocket universe, Superman and Matrix team up to fight a group of Kryptonian criminals who escape the Phantom Zone. However, the alternate Earth is destroyed in the process. Now orphaned, Matrix returns with Clark to his Earth, joining the DC Universe and becoming the new Supergirl. From her introduction, Matrix was designed to replace Kara Zor-El, serving a similar function as a female equivalent to Superman, while retaining DC's mandate against other Kryptonian heroes. After her debut, the character lived with Jonathan and Martha Kent in Smallville. She eventually began a romance with Lex Luthor's son, who was later revealed to be a clone of the real Lex, and even briefly joined the Teen Titans. This iteration of Supergirl also received a 4-issue miniseries in 1994, written by Roger Stern, and appeared in many prominent storylines and crossovers from this era, such as Panic in the Sky, The Death and Return of Superman, and 0 Hour. But while Matrix established herself as the Supergirl of the initial post-Crisis era, by the latter half of the 1990s, DC would begin yet another radical reinvention of the Woman of Tomorrow, introducing a brand new character to adopt the mantle, and unknowingly sowing the seeds for Kara's eventual resurrection. In 1996 though, a new ongoing Supergirl series was launched written by Peter David. Although this starred the Matrix character, David sought to rework her status quo and bring her closer to the character's pre-Crisis counterpart. As such, after undergoing a crisis of confidence, Matrix discovers Linda Danvers, a young woman who had been kidnapped and sacrificed to the devil by a mysterious cult. In her attempts to revive Danvers, the two are instead merged into a single entity. This new series lasted all the way up to 2003, written entirely by Peter David, and still remains to this day the longest running Supergirl comic at 82 issues. During this period, David began to phase out some of the traits and powers most associated with Matrix, namely her shape-shifting ability, and framed the Linda Danvers persona as Supergirl's everyday alter ego, itself a reference to Kara's pre-Crisis adopted name of Linda Lee Danvers. The biggest change to Supergirl's status quo though came in issue 12, with the revelation that Linda is actually an Earth-born angel. It's explained that this is why she was targeted by a cult, and the attack unlocked her previously dormant abilities, with Supergirl now being able to teleport and develop wings of fire. Many of the subsequent issues focus on Supergirl battling the occult, demons and other supernatural foes, with this period becoming one of renewed success for the character. In issue 50 though, this status quo was changed once again. During Supergirl's battle with the demon Carnivore, Matrix and Linda were ripped apart from one another. This led to the Matrix character being quietly retired, only appearing briefly in later issues, now having bonded with an apocalyptian angel called Twilight, with the series now instead focusing on a somewhat depowered Linda continuing on as Supergirl. Despite David's run being very well liked by its readers, by the end of 2002 the comic sales had begun to slump, and DC planned to cancel the series. Knowing that this book would be likely coming to an end, and wanting to give it a fitting send-off, David and artist Ed Benz devised a story called Many Happy Returns, told throughout issues 75 through 80. Here, Linda encounters a strange spaceship that crash lands on Earth, only to discover the pre-crisis Kara Zor-El inside of it. After teaming up to fight the villain Rebel, Linda tries to uncover the truth behind Kara's arrival, only for her to fly off in search of her cousin. Instead, she encounters Connor Kent, aka Superboy, and the trio have to work together to stop a dinosaur rampage caused by Mr. Mxyzptlk. It's during this team up that Kara does in fact meet the post-crisis iteration of Superman, though he obviously doesn't recognise her and instead believes that she's an excited fan. Meanwhile, Linda tries to befriend Kara, all while investigating just how she appeared in this reality. The pair are eventually confronted by the Spectre though, who explains that unless Kara returns to her timeline, the entire multiverse will be destroyed. Unwilling to sacrifice her newfound friend, Linda steals the rocket and flies herself back to Kara's Earth. Emerging in the pre-crisis DC universe, Linda takes her counterpart's place and becomes that continuity's Supergirl, living there as Kara for several years until she's confronted by Superman, who reveals that he always knew she was an imposter, and the two eventually fall in love and get married. Linda ultimately lives an entire life in this timeline, raising a family with Kal-El before the Spectre appears and sends her home, proclaiming that she will doom both realities if Kara doesn't die fighting the Anti-Monitor. Eventually, a heartbroken and dejected Linda returns to the main DC universe and reunites with Kara Zor-El, before tearfully knocking her unconscious and sending her back home to certain death. This storyline concludes with a remorseful Linda, haunted by memories of a life that no longer exists, quitting as Supergirl and writing an emotional letter to Clark, explaining her intentions to start a new life. This tragic tale represented Peter David's finale to his 7-year run on Supergirl. Despite its somber tone and ending, it was designed to celebrate the storied history of this character, and give readers, even if just for a few issues, some closure and finality with Kara Zor-El, all while retiring Linda Danvers and paving the way for a new version to be introduced later. Explaining his intentions behind this storyline, David explained when speaking with Newsrama that,
although it had always been in the back of my mind that doing a Kara-related storyline might be fun, the impetus at this point was, frankly, sales. I was trying to figure out who currently wasn't reading the series, and came up with two groups that we'd have a shot at getting. Those who'd become bored with the current storyline, and those who didn't accept any Supergirl save Kara. By doing Many Happy Returns, I sought to pull in both potential audiences.
Issue 80 was both the end of the Many Happy Returns storyline and the finale of this Supergirl title. Interestingly, Peter David later revealed that he had plans to relaunch the comic as an ensemble series, tweaking its name to Supergirls and focusing on the lives of Linda, Kara, and Power Girl. Instead, he later teamed with David Lopez to launch a new title called Fallen Angels, originally published by DC before moving to IDW, which continued many of his ideas about Earthborn Angels and served as a spiritual yet unofficial follow-up to his work on Supergirl. Meanwhile, DC Comics began plotting who would replace Linda Danvers in her self-appointed retirement, and despite the company's 20-year insistence that Kara would remain gone, the response to her brief appearance in Many Happy Returns slowly but surely opened the door to her unlikely return. Before we continue, I just want to take a quick moment and remind you that this video and every video on the channel is brought to you by patreon.com/Owen Likes Comics. If you'd like to support my work, get early access to each new video, and special bonus videos every month, consider signing up for just $1 per month. I'll leave links in the description and the pinned comment, or just go to patreon.com/Owen Likes Comics. Thanks for all of your support, and let's get back to the video. In the wake of Peter David's run concluding in May 2003, DC introduced yet another Supergirl in the form of Zor-El. She debuted in Superman the 10-Cent Adventure as the daughter of Clark and Lois from the far future, only to be later revealed as a woman unrelated to Kal-El who was genetically altered by Brainiac to appear Kryptonian and implanted with a nanovirus. Perhaps more noteworthy though was another recent addition to the DC universe, this time in animation. You see, in season 2 of Superman the Animated Series, the character of Kara Z was introduced. First appearing in the 2-part episode Little Lost Girl, she's explained to be the last survivor of Argo, a sister planet of Krypton who's discovered by Superman and brought to Earth. While they're not technically related, the two share a bond over their similar powers and heritage, with this Supergirl becoming a mainstay of the DC animated universe. Kara's popularity in animation not only led to Linda Danvers' costume being changed to more closely resemble hers, but it also intensified conversations within DC about bringing back the original Supergirl. This coincided with the launch of Superman/Batman, a new monthly comic from writer Jeff Loeb and a team of artists including Ed McGuinness, Michael Turner, and Carlos Pacheco. As part of this title, Loeb pitched a storyline featuring a Kryptonian asteroid heading towards Earth, and suggested to Superman group editor Eddie Berganza and then Vice President Dan DiDio that this premise could be used to reintroduce Kara Zor-El to the main continuity. With DC's approval, issues 8 through 13 of Superman/Batman told the Supergirl from Krypton storyline, which sees Kara crash land on Earth in search of her long-lost cousin. These issues emphasize that this isn't the same Supergirl from the 1950s though. Instead, much like how the Man of Steel's continuity was reset after Crisis, this is a brand new iteration of Kara Zor-El, appearing on Earth and meeting Superman for the very first time. This storyline focused mainly on Kara's developing bond with her cousin, adjusting to her new home on Earth, and her being brainwashed by Darkseid, manipulated into becoming his weapon and forced to fight Kal-El. The success of this reintroduction of the Woman of Tomorrow led to DC launching a new ongoing Supergirl book in late 2005, with Jeff Loeb returning to write the first 5 issues. As such, the remainder of the 2000s would establish Kara as a key figure within the DC universe, both through her solo series and in particular the work of Sterling Gates and Jamal Igle, and her many appearances in high-profile crossovers and storylines, including Infinite Crisis, Blackest Night, and New Krypton. However, this era would also see Linda Danvers disappear from continuity, only making a small handful of appearances following Kara's return. She appeared in issues 25 and 26 of Superman/Batman as part of a team of Supergirls assembled by Kara to help find Superman, and was then featured in the 2008 Reign of Hell miniseries, where she was banished to Hell by Lilith and forced to fight in a demonic war. Henceforth, while Linda faded into obscurity, Kara asserted herself as a mainstay for many years to come. Her recently relaunched series ran all the way until DC's New 52 reboot in 2011. With DC resetting its continuity yet again, Kara's backstory was updated in the Last Daughter of Krypton storyline. Her father, Zor-El, was revealed to be alive and now a new version of the cyborg Superman, and she briefly became a member of the Red Lantern Corps. Although Kara was the only canonical Supergirl during this time, the 90s iteration of Matrix did briefly appear in 2015's Convergence crossover. That same year, the Supergirl TV show debuted on CBS, running for 6 seasons between October 2015 and November 2021. After the show moved to the CW network with season 2, it became part of the interconnected Arrowverse, with Kara frequently teaming up with the likes of Green Arrow and The Flash in various crossovers, while both Superman and Martian Manhunter made regular appearances in her standalone show. As such, by the end of the 2010s, Kara Zor-El had firmly established herself in both comics and the mainstream media, becoming the definitive Supergirl for generations of fans, and finally escaping the shadow of her 2 decades spent in editorial hell. In 2021, Supergirl starred in the 8-issue maxi series Woman of Tomorrow, written by Tom King with art by Bilquis Everly. The comic follows Kara on her 21st birthday as she's recruited by a young girl named Ruthie to help hunt down her family's killer. Drawing inspiration from Charles Portis's 1968 novel True Grit and focusing heavily on Supergirl's traumatic past, having witnessed the destruction of both Krypton and Argo City, Woman of Tomorrow was met with critical acclaim upon its release, being nominated nominated for Best Limited Series at the 2022 Eisner Awards, and serving as the basis for the character's second live-action film. And with Kara Zor-El returning to the big screen as part of James Gunn's DC universe, it's interesting to reflect on the character's unusual history and the many decades DC spent trying to move away from the original Supergirl. For a character as well known as Kara, who has had countless ongoing comics, 2 live-action films and a long-running TV show, it's fascinating to think that for an entire generation, DC maintained a strict editorial policy that the character couldn't be used in any canonical stories, and was instead left to become a relic of a bygone era. Considering this strategy was built on the principle of simplifying Superman's status quo, this period led to the introduction of pocket universes, shape-shifting entities, Earthborn angels, and alleged time-displaced daughters. Despite their intentions, it feels like DC ultimately made Supergirl more complicated when trying to solve this problem, and in the end, the simplest strategy was to reintegrate Kara Zor-El back into mainstream comics, making her 2005 return a cathartic moment for fans who had campaigned for her return for almost 20 years. This isn't to say though that the intervening years don't have a lot of upside. There are many readers who fondly remembered Matrix's tenure as Supergirl, while Peter David's run is still the longest running Supergirl comic to this day, with his Linda Danvers incarnation remaining beloved by many and being one of my favourite interpretations of this hero. It's a shame, honestly, that DC hasn't been able to keep these other excellent characters in prominent positions since returning Kara to her rightful place, because as convoluted as Supergirl's history might be, it's ultimately a story of countless writers and artists trying new things to keep this mantle alive, and creating several genuinely rich and interesting characters in the years between Kara's tragic death and her climactic return. I should mention that in Mark Waid's new History of the DC Universe comic, the company have attempted to condense and streamline Supergirl's backstory, combining aspects of her pre- and post-crisis history, and establishing that after dying at the hands of the Anti-Monitor, she was resurrected when she returned in Superman/Batman. With that said though, I do hope the company finds a way to not only continue positioning Kara as a key player in the DC Universe, both on and off the printed page, but also find a spot for the other versions of Supergirl who each earn their place in comics history. There have been some recent references and tributes to these other heroes. In King and Everly's Woman of Tomorrow, Linda's time as the Earthborn Angel is referenced when Kara manifests wings of fire after taking a red kryptonite drug. Meanwhile, Sophie Campbell, the current Supergirl writer, is currently teasing the return of Matrix, with issue 14's cover paying director Marge to that character's first appearance. Still though, as Supergirl flies back onto the big screen, I think it's important to highlight this storied yet bizarre history and acknowledge the long journey back to continuity for Kara Zor-El, as well as take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate the other characters who carried the Supergirl legacy until she found her way home. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you enjoyed this and you want some more, there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might also enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/OwenLikesComics, or if you just want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, just at Owen Likes Comics. But that's all for this video. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you next time. But until then, take care and keep reading.